Real estate agency relationships are governed by common law, which is established by tradition and court decisions, and statutory law, which is passed by state legislatures and other governing bodies. A little history of agency. You have common law, statutory law, and administrative law. Common laws are the rules established by tradition and court decisions. That's where caveat emptor comes in. Let the buyer beware. Remember, Alabama is a caveat emptor state. Then you have statutory laws, which are enacted by legislature. Then your administrative law are the rules and regulations created by real estate commissions authorized by the legislature. Definitions. Agent represents the interest of another person in dealings with a third person. Principal hires the agent and delegates responsibilities of the representation to the agent. Agency is a fiduciary relationship between a principal and an agent in which the agent represents the principal in one or more transactions. And fiduciary is a relationship in which the agent is held in a position of special trust and confidence by the principal. All right, clients and customers. It's a little particular with these two words. Only agents of people may call their consumer a client. If you're just pushing the paperwork and acting as a transaction broker, you will refer to them as customer. Saying the word client or my buyer or my seller indicates that you're taking possession of them and that you are incurring a fiduciary relationship of trust. All right. In Alabama, licensees must provide to all customers and all parties brokerage services honestly and in good faith, reasonable skill and care, keep information confidential unless otherwise required to be disclosed by law, agency relationship, or becomes public knowledge or you have written permission. Need to account for all property and possession of the licensee and present all written offers in a timely and truthful fashion, including counteroffers, addenda, and answer all consumer questions related to the transaction, and disclose any personal or family interest in the property, because that can be considered a conflict of interest. Now, the duties that a licensee has in Alabama to clients, all clients. Fulfill the obligations as required by agency agreement and lawful instructions of the client that were in the scope of duties. Full disclosure. That means to disclose all information known to be material to the transaction and not discovered by observation or investigation. Licensees are not required nor have the duty to discover information. And loyalty. Represent the best interest of the client unless to do so is in violation or prohibited by law. 3 options in real estate transactions: transaction broker for buyer and or seller, single agency for buyer or seller, not both, or limited consensual dual agency for both the buyer and the seller. Agents. An agent is hired by a principal to act on behalf of the principal. Agency is a fiduciary relationship in which the agent is held in a position of special trust and confidence by the principal. In a real estate transaction, the principal is the client. In a non-agent relationship, the party for whom some level of service is provided and who is entitled to fairness and honesty is called a customer. Consensual relationships. The relationship between the principal and agent must be consensual. Expressed agency is based on an expressed agreement between the agent and the principal. Implied agency is created when the action of the parties indicate that they have mutually consented to an agency. The source of the agent's compensation does not determine the agency. The duties a licensee may perform as a transaction broker are ministerial acts. They're not considered client-level duties. A non-agent is also known as a facilitator, an intermediary, transaction broker, transaction coordinator, or contract broker. So what are the agent responsibilities to customers and third parties? You can remember this by the acronym ADD, ADD. Account for all funds entrusted to the licensee, deal honestly and with integrity, and disclose all known facts that materially affect the value of residential property that not are readily observable to the buyer. There are 6 common law fiduciary duties: care, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, accounting, and confidentiality. Single agent. The agent represents only one party to the transaction: seller representation, buyer representation, or property management representation. Limited consensual dual agent. Real estate brokerage company that represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. It requires a licensee to obtain a written consent of both the buyer and the seller to act as their agent. The 2 most common circumstances of dual agency is when 2 or more salespersons licensed under the same broker each represent a different party to the transaction, or when one licensee represents both the buyer and the seller in the same sales transaction. These are the duties a licensee has as far as a limited consensual dual agent. So brokers may provide services as a limited consensual dual agent only with prior written informed consent of all clients of the broker in the transaction. Now, when representing more than one client, a broker owes the same duties except where a violation of fiduciary duties of the licensee to other clients. Real estate professionals are required to disclose the parties they represent. Be very careful. Undisclosed dual agency, which may occur inadvertently, can result in the rescission of a sales contract, forfeiture of commission, a lawsuit for damages, and possibly license suspension or revocation. How is agency terminated? Well, it can be by the completion of the purpose, death or incapacitation of either party, destruction of the property, hurricane, expiration of terms, mutual agreement, breach by one of the parties, or operation of law, bankruptcy. Agency coupled with an interest is when an agent has possession or control of a property of his principal and possesses legal rights against interference by third parties. It is an agency relationship in which the agent is given an estate or interest in the property that is the subject of agency. An agency coupled with interest cannot be revoked by the principal or terminated upon the principal's death.